The snowstorm howled like a wounded beast over the icy plains of Eurus. Most explorers avoided the planet for its relentless blizzards and crushing cold, but to Dr. Elijah Maddox, it was a haven, a place where silence let him think, and the past couldn't chase him so loudly. His research outpost stood on the edge of a frozen cliff built to withstand the worst. But today, something unusual blinked on his scanner. A heat signature, faint and moving against the wind. Curious, and maybe a little desperate for company, Elijah bundled up, grabbed his rifle just in case, and trekked out into the swirling white. The signal led him through the storm, each step sinking into thigh-deep snow until he saw it, a large figure, stumbling and collapsed beside a jagged ice ridge. It was a woman. No, something like a woman. She was tall, easily 7 feet. Her skin shimmered with a pearlescent sheen, blue like deep glacial ice. Her limbs were thick, muscular, but graceful, and she was freezing, half-conscious. Her long hair clung to her face, and her breath came in ragged, misty gasps. "Hey, you alive?" Elijah shouted over the wind, kneeling beside her. She tried to lift her head. "Don't touch." He ignored the warning. She was dying. Back at the outpost, it took nearly an hour to warm her up. She huddled near the heating core, trembling, clutching the thermal blanket he wrapped around her. Her glowing eyes locked onto him with a mixture of fear and confusion. "I'm Elijah," he said gently. "You're safe." She flinched at the name. "A human? And you're not," he said, smiling wryly. "What's your name?" "Varah," she whispered, then closed her eyes. 2 weeks later, Varah had mostly recovered. Her strength was returning, too quickly, in fact. She was almost breaking furniture every time she leaned on something. Her voice had grown stronger, and she'd begun eating more than him twice over. "You're huge," Elijah commented one morning, watching her duck to avoid the ceiling beams. She gave a bitter laugh. "I know." He frowned. "Sorry, that was rude." "It's the truth, that's why they cast me out." She sat heavily, her tone growing distant. "My species, the Drahiri, were evolved for strength, agility, intelligence, but only those within certain size ratios can reproduce. I'm outside the bounds. A biological error? A failed vessel?" "That's ridiculous," Elijah said, taken aback. Varah shrugged. "The matrons disagreed. They said I'd pollute the bloodlines. I was sentenced to exile when I turned of age." He stared at her, stunned by the cruelty. "They threw you out just because you were too strong?" "Too big," she corrected. "My body wasn't made to carry offspring. At least, that's what they believe. I've never tried." There was pain in her voice, not self-pity, something deeper, a longing buried under years of rejection. "I've spent the last few cycles surviving storms and beasts," she murmured, "until I saw your outpost lights. I thought they were hallucinations." Over the next months, Varah and Elijah developed a quiet rhythm. She learned to use the equipment, helped reinforce the outpost, and even hunted game from under the snow. Her laughter, deep and echoing, filled the halls on good days. On bad days, she stood by the frost-glazed window, silently watching the endless white. "You ever think about going back?" Elijah asked one evening. She shook her head. "They wouldn't take me." "Even if they're wrong?" She turned to him. "What if they're not?" He stepped closer. "I think you'd make a great mother." She froze, eyes wide. "Why would you say that?" He shrugged. "You care, you protect. You're patient, despite everything. That's more than most people I know." Varah lowered her gaze. Even if I could, no Drahiri male would risk pairing with me. Too many complications. Too many assumptions. Elijah smiled. Then maybe you need someone who doesn't assume. That night, everything changed. There was no storm, no danger. Just a quiet moment in the warmth of the outpost. Two souls, scarred and exiled by their own people, choosing to defy what they'd been told. And in that moment of vulnerability, of trust, something was created. Something neither of them had expected. Weeks later, Varah stood by the med scanner, gripping the frame, trembling. Elijah rushed over. "What is it? Are you—" She turned, eyes glowing with disbelief. "I'm pregnant." He blinked. "What?" "I'm pregnant," she said again, laughing in awe. "It's not supposed to be possible." He was speechless, staring at her. "Are you sure?" She nodded. The scanner confirmed. My body, it adapted. He stepped closer, gently placing a hand on her stomach. Then they were wrong. Her expression softened, tears forming. They were so wrong. The pregnancy was hard, not just physically, though Varah's strength meant she accidentally broke furniture and dented metal tools during hormonal surges, but emotionally. She had never known nurture, never been told she was capable of creation. Elijah never left her side. He built a custom reclining pod, modified nutrients, even taught himself basic Drahiri lullabies from her recordings. One night, she confessed, "I'm scared. What if it's not healthy? What if the child is like me?" He took her hands. "Then we love them, like you deserve to be loved." That silenced her, not because it was poetic, but because no one had ever said it to her before. The birth was brutal. A hybrid pregnancy brought unknown risks. For 14 hours, the outpost echoed with primal roars, broken glass, and Elijah's desperate instructions to the med drone. Then silence, followed by a soft cry. Elijah held the infant first. A girl, wrapped in a thermal swaddle with lavender-tinted skin and tufts of white hair. Then he handed her to Varah, whose massive arms cradled her like she was the most fragile thing in the universe. Varah didn't speak, didn't breathe for a moment, just stared in wonder. Then she wept. 5 years later, the Drahiri scout ship landed with a thunderous boom on the edge of the glacial shelf. It was rare for them to come near human settlements, let alone remote outposts. Elijah stood outside, holding the child, now a bright, curious 5-year-old with his eyes and her mother's strength. Varah stood tall beside him, defiant. The Drahiri matron who stepped out looked aged, regal, and utterly stunned. "You survived," she said coldly. Varah nodded. "More than survived. I thrived." The matron's eyes dropped to the child. "That is not possible." "Isn't it?" Elijah said. "Meet Mira." The child waved. "Hi." The matron's face twisted between disbelief and something dangerously close to awe. "She's healthy?" "Stronger than you ever dreamed," Varah replied. "And smarter." "An abomination," one of the guards muttered. "Then this abomination is living proof your law is wrong," Elijah snapped. "You cast her out because of fear, because she didn't fit your boxes." The matron studied them, her silence dragging on. Then she said, "Return with us. We'll study the child, learn from her." Varah stepped forward, voice cold. "You won't take her. She's not yours. She's mine." "She is Drahiri." "She's ours," Elijah interrupted, "and she's staying with her parents." The matron finally nodded. "So be it. But the council will know. The exile who bore the impossible." As the ship lifted and vanished, Elijah turned to Varah. "Do you regret not going back?" She shook her head, hugging Mira tighter. "Number, I already have everything they said I couldn't have." That night, in the quiet hum of the outpost, Mira curled between her parents on the thick furs. "You're strong, Mama," she said sleepily. Varah smiled. "So are you." "Will they come back?" the girl asked. "Maybe," Elijah replied, "but they can't hurt us." "Why?" "Because you exist," Varah whispered, "and they can't erase that." Outside the snow fell again, but inside the cabin there was only warmth, not just from fire or blankets, but from love, chosen, earned, and finally shared.